Hey everyone, ready to dive deep into the world of Mid90s? Released on October 19, 2018, this film has sparked endless discussions, and today we're uncovering every thrilling detail. If you enjoy this deep dive, don't forget to hit that like button. It really helps us grow. And for more incredible movie explorations and hidden gems, subscribe to the channel. Now, let's unravel the magic behind this cinematic masterpiece. When Mid90s first hit theaters on October 19, 2018, it didn't come with explosive special effects or massive marketing campaigns. It didn't rely on big-budget gimmicks or a stacked cast of A-listers. Instead, it arrived quietly, like a subtle wave from the past, bringing with it a rush of nostalgia, rawness, and a deeply personal sense of honesty that hadn't been seen in this way in years. Written and directed by Jonah Hill in his directorial debut, Mid90s wasn't just a film. It was a time capsule, a confessional, and a love letter to a very specific, unforgettable moment in American youth culture. It tapped into something universal beneath the surface of its ultra-specific setting, and in doing so, it became one of the most emotionally resonant and culturally significant coming-of-age films of its generation. What makes Mid90s extraordinary isn't just that it transports you to a specific time and place, but how effortlessly it immerses you into the heartbeat of that world. The Los Angeles of the mid-1990s is brought to life not through big, sweeping cityscapes, but through the intimate lens of alleyways, skate spots, and living rooms soaked in VHS fuzz and cigarette smoke. Shot on Super 16mm film with a nostalgic 4:3 aspect ratio, the entire visual approach feels like something pulled straight out of an old shoebox of home videos. It's grainy, imperfect, and unfiltered, just like the kids it follows. That aesthetic choice isn't just stylish. It's soul-deep, a perfect visual metaphor for the world Jonah Hill is capturing. Gritty, beautiful, and achingly real. The story follows 13-year-old Stevie, a quiet and observant boy growing up in a chaotic household where violence simmers beneath every surface. Sonny Suljic plays Stevie with a quiet vulnerability that's magnetic. He doesn't have to say much to make you feel everything. Stevie's older brother Ian, played with brooding volatility by Lucas Hedges, lashes out at him in moments of rage and resentment, creating a home environment where every moment feels like a tightrope walk. Their mother, Dabney, portrayed by Katherine Waterston, is loving but overburdened, and emotionally distant in all the ways that count. Stevie's need for connection is palpable, and it's that hunger that leads him into the orbit of a group of older skateboarders who seem to move through the world with a kind of freedom he's never known. When Stevie stumbles into a skate shop and catches sight of the crew, Ray, Fuckshit, Ruben, and fourth grade, he doesn't just see skaters. He sees possibilities. These are the kids who talk in their own language, who live with wild confidence, who make danger look like art. He doesn't care that they mock his toy-sized board or that he's clearly out of his depth. He just wants in, and slowly, painfully, he earns it. That initiation, through scraped skin, daring tricks, and nights spent on rooftops or house parties, forms the emotional backbone of the film. These boys become his new family, and for the first time in his life, Stevie begins to feel seen. Ray, played by real-life skater Nakel Smith, emerges as the quiet leader of the group, mature beyond his years and haunted by the weight of unspoken losses. He's the moral center, the one who keeps the chaos from imploding. Fuckshit, played with wild energy by Prenatt, is the loose cannon, the party animal who embodies both the thrill and the danger of living without limits. Ruben, another young kid just a few years older than Stevie, is filled with unspoken jealousy and insecurity, watching as Stevie slowly eclipses him in the group dynamic. Fourth grade, the silent observer with a camcorder perpetually in hand, barely speaks but captures everything. He is the archivist of their fleeting youth. Hill's screenplay is minimalistic in a way that trusts the audience. It doesn't spoon-feed emotions or over-explain motivations. It lets characters breathe. Dialogue is messy and real, filled with the crude slang and bravado of young boys trying to figure out what manhood even means. There are moments of shocking authenticity, scenes where you're almost unsure whether you're watching actors or real kids just being themselves. That's by design. Hill made the bold choice to cast mostly non-actors, pulling from the real world of skate culture to populate his film with people who lived this life. That decision pays off in spades. It gives Mid90s an unshakable credibility, a sense that we're not watching a movie, but reliving a memory. The plot is simple on the surface but layered with emotional complexity. As Stevie gets deeper into the crew, he experiences the highs and lows of adolescence at full speed. First cigarettes, first alcohol, first party, first kiss. Each milestone arrives with excitement and a quiet undercurrent of unease. These kids are growing up fast, maybe too fast, and the film never flinches away from showing both the freedom and the fallout of that pace. There's a devastating scene where Stevie, having pushed his limits too far, ends up unconscious after a car crash. That moment halts the film's momentum and hits like a gut punch. Not just because it's terrifying, but because we care so much about this kid who was just trying to belong. The performances across the board are raw and naturalistic. Suljic's portrayal of Stevie is nothing short of remarkable. He never plays the part for sympathy or drama, but instead captures the awkward, painful, and exhilarating truths of being 13. Lucas Hedges, known for more refined and dramatic roles, disappears into the violent and emotionally confused Ian, offering a portrait of toxic masculinity and internalized pain that feels disturbingly familiar. Nakel Smith, in his acting debut, delivers a performance that is wise, grounded, and deeply human. His scenes with Stevie, particularly the ones where he gently tries to steer him toward a better path, are among the film's most moving. But what makes Mid90s more than just a well-made coming-of-age story is its cultural resonance. This film struck a nerve because it didn't just show what it was like to be a kid in the 1990s, it captured what it felt like. For those who lived it, the movie was a mirror. For those who didn't, it was an invitation. It brought back the sound of dial-up internet and boomboxes, the look of baggy jeans and oversized tees, the vibe of a pre-digital world where connection happened face-to-face and pain was hidden behind a smirk or a stunt gone wrong. It offered a portrait of a time when kids were left to figure things out on their own, when skateboarding was more than just a sport. It was an identity, a community, and a way to escape. The soundtrack, perfectly curated with a blend of era-defining hip-hop and lo-fi beats, further cements the film's authenticity. From Wu-Tang Clan to Morrissey, the music doesn't just accompany the scenes. It elevates them, acting as a pulse to the film's emotional rhythm. It's a soundtrack that doesn't beg for attention, but feels like it's been playing in the background of your own memories for years. Jonah Hill's direction, subtle yet deliberate, is a revelation. Best known before this as a comedic actor, Hill made the bold transition behind the camera and proved that his storytelling instincts run deep. He doesn't try to impress with flashy visuals or over-edited sequences. Instead, he builds a world and lets us live in it. He gives his characters space to evolve, to stumble, and to shine. His passion for skate culture, for Los Angeles, and for the emotional messiness of adolescence bleeds through every frame. This is a deeply personal film, but it's never self-indulgent. It's clear-eyed, compassionate, and brave enough to show the ugly alongside the beautiful. Ultimately, Mid90s became a cultural phenomenon not because it screamed for attention, but because it whispered truths so many people had been waiting to hear. It reminded viewers of the fragile power of friendship, the pain of growing up without a roadmap, and the beauty of finding your people in the most unexpected places. It spoke to a generation that often felt unseen, unheard, and misunderstood. And it did so without judgment, without moralizing, and without sugarcoating. Viewers should dive deeper into Mid90s not just because it's a well-crafted film, but because it offers something rare in today's cinematic landscape: honesty. It captures a time, a culture, and a stage of life with a sensitivity and precision that's almost impossible to fake. It's filled with small moments that speak volumes. Glances, silences, bruises, laughter. And those are the moments that stick with you long after the credits roll. Whether you grew up skating in the streets or never stepped foot on a board, Mid90s has something to say about who we are, how we grow, and what we carry with us from the days when the world still felt new. Because in the end, Mid90s isn't really about skateboarding. It's about survival. It's about the messy, joyful, painful process of carving out an identity when the world offers you nothing but obstacles. And it's about the fleeting, shimmering magic of youth. That time when your scars are still fresh, your heroes are your friends, and everything still feels possible. That's why this film isn't just worth watching. It's worth remembering. Every frame, every fall, every unfinished sentence. Because it reminds us that sometimes the smallest stories carry the biggest truths. The story opens not with words, but with a feeling, one that's all too familiar. A closed bedroom door, muffled arguing, a world that seems to pulse with tension just beneath the surface. 13-year-old Stevie stands at the edge of it all, quiet and wide-eyed, a sponge soaking up every bitter moment of the household he's trapped in. The walls are thin, but the space between him and his older brother Ian is even thinner and dangerous. Played with a simmering aggression by Lucas Hedges, Ian is a powder keg, ticking and twitching. His anger always just a breath away from explosion. He doesn't need a reason. Stevie looks at him the wrong way. That's enough. A punch, a shove, a reminder that in this house, power is taken, not given. But Stevie doesn't fight back. Not yet. He retreats instead into silence, into obsession. He studies Ian's room with the fascination of someone trying to decode another species. Rap CDs, cool sneakers, posters on the wall. Every detail is an artifact, evidence of a world Stevie isn't part of but desperately wants to understand. There's something mythic about his older brother, even through the bruises. He's what Stevie isn't. Tough, confident, cool. At least on the surface. But this isn't a movie about emulating your brother. It's about finding your own way. And that path begins the moment Stevie stumbles into a local skate shop, a place that practically hums with the raw energy of youth and rebellion. It's a world unlike anything he's known. Graffiti on the walls, boards thudding against concrete. A language of inside jokes and mockery spoken with ease by a tight crew of skaters who orbit the shop like kings of a world Stevies never dared to dream of entering. They're older, louder, funnier. They walk like they own the sidewalks. And Stevie, awkward and invisible in his oversized orange polo, wants nothing more than to be one of them. There's Ray, the smooth, focused skater who seems to float just above the chaos, speaking only when it counts. Then there's Fuckshit, wild and electric, his name a perfect match for his chaotic energy. Ruben, the youngest of the group, is aggressive and sharp-tongued, fighting for respect in a pecking order he's never quite comfortable in. And fourth grade, always filming, always quiet, capturing it all with a camera that sees more than anyone realizes. Stevie doesn't belong. Not yet. But his determination is fierce, and so is his hunger for inclusion. He takes rejection on the chin, literally and metaphorically. He wipes out on a board that's way too small, gets mocked for his babyish setup, and still comes back the next day. He starts shadowing Ruben, who reluctantly allows him into the outskirts of their world, if only to have someone newer and more clueless to boss around. Ruben calls him Sunburn, a nickname that sticks, mostly because it's silly, slightly cruel, and weirdly affectionate. From here, the real transformation begins. Stevie trades in his childish wardrobe for baggy tees and scuffed-up sneakers. He steals from his mother's room to afford a proper skateboard. He starts imitating the group's speech, their posture, their swagger. And for a while, it works. He starts to blend in. But what he doesn't realize is that belonging comes with a cost. The film doesn't dramatize this change with big declarations. Instead, it lets the moments speak for themselves. A cigarette passed casually between hands. A dare to jump a gap that's clearly too wide. A party where no one's watching, and a kid is suddenly surrounded by experiences he's too young to understand but too afraid to back away from. Jonah Hill's direction here is nothing short of surgical. Every choice, every glance, every awkward silence is loaded with emotional weight. As Stevie is slowly folded into the group, his home life grows more volatile. Ian senses the shift, and his jealousy turns into rage. The brother who once dismissed Stevie as nothing now seems to feel replaced. Their fights become more violent, more desperate. There's a terrifying moment when Ian nearly strangles Stevie, his grip unrelenting, his eyes filled with something twisted and sad. And Stevie, now emboldened by his new life outside the house, starts to push back. He yells. He resists. For the first time, he has something worth fighting for. Meanwhile, within the group, fractures begin to form. Ruben, once the youngest, resents Stevie's rapid rise in popularity. Ray begins to pull away from Fuckshit, whose partying habits are becoming reckless. The dynamic is shifting, and though it's subtle at first, you can feel the tremors. Ray wants more than just skating, he wants purpose. Fuckshit wants the party to never end. And Stevie? He just wants to keep feeling like he matters. It's in this delicate balance that one of the film's most pivotal scenes unfolds. The boys go to a house party, Stevie's first real step into a world of teenage chaos. There's drinking, sex, bravado. Stevie, barely a teenager, ends up alone in a bedroom with an older girl. The scene is raw and controversial, not because of what happens, but because of how honestly it's portrayed. It's not glorified. It's uncomfortable. And that's the point. This is what happens when kids raise themselves, when the line between growing up and being thrown into the fire is almost invisible. After the party, the adrenaline still rushing, Stevie walks with a new sense of confidence. But it's fragile. He's changing, sure, but he's also breaking. Trying to fit in, he starts mimicking Fuckshit's habits, pushing boundaries to dangerous extremes. He gets drunk. He smokes. He tests how far he can go without being rejected. And eventually, he pushes too far. At home, he lashes out at his mom, spirals into a screaming match, and in a moment of pure, unfocused pain, he nearly destroys himself. There's a gut-wrenching sequence where he intentionally harms himself, a desperate cry for help that no one seems equipped to answer. These moments are hard to watch, but they're essential, because Mid90s doesn't sanitize youth. It doesn't pretend that adolescence is a smooth ride from innocence to maturity. It shows how messy it is, how violent, how confusing. It shows how the need to belong can twist into self-destruction when no one's paying attention. And it shows that even in the tightest crew, even with all the laughter and loyalty, some pain stays hidden. The first half of Mid90s builds tension like a quiet storm. You know something's coming. A crash, a confrontation, a reckoning, but it never telegraphs its punches. Instead, it layers the narrative with small choices, moments that seem minor but echo loud later. Ray giving Stevie advice about skating and life. Ruben slowly turning on him. Fuckshit becoming more unhinged. Ian watching, brooding, alone in his room while his brother slips away into another world. It's storytelling with teeth, gentle but relentless. The film invites you to love these characters, then forces you to see their wounds. And as the first half closes, we're left with a feeling that's equal parts awe and dread, because Stevie's journey has only just begun. The falls are getting harder, the stakes higher, the innocence is fading fast, and the real test of friendship, of identity, of survival is still to come. As we move into the second half of Mid90s, Stevie has fully stepped into the world he once only dreamed of. But dreams have shadows, and for all the laughter, the tricks landed, and the bonds built in skate parks and alleyways, there's something darker brewing underneath. Something that's been there from the start, but is only now beginning to rise to the surface. Skating isn't just a hobby for Stevie anymore. It's his oxygen, his sanctuary, his defiance. He wakes up bruised and battered, body aching from wipeouts that would make most kids cry for help. But he doesn't cry. He doesn't complain. He wears the pain like a badge, because pain means he's doing something real, something his old life never gave him. Each fall, each scar is proof he belongs. And in a life where he's always felt small, skating is the one thing that makes him feel big. But that hunger to prove himself starts to mutate. The line between bravery and recklessness begins to blur. He's pushing harder, skating faster, taking risks that send him flying headfirst into concrete. Not because he has to, but because he thinks he has something to prove. To Ray, to Fuckshit, to the world, and most tragically, to himself. Back at home, the tension that was always there with his family has reached a boiling point. Stevie's mom, Dabney, played with a raw mix of concern and helplessness by Catherine Waterston, sees her son slipping further out of reach. She tries to intervene, tries to ask questions, draw boundaries, regain control. But the more she pulls, the further Stevie drifts. Her worry is palpable, but so is her confusion. She's not just scared of what Stevie's becoming. She's scared she doesn't know him at all anymore. The boy who once played with action figures is now disappearing into the streets, returning home high, bruised, distant. And Ian, the older brother who once towered over Stevie both physically and emotionally, now seems small, powerless. He's watching the dynamic shift. The balance of fear between them is no longer lopsided. There's a heartbreaking scene where Ian walks past Stevie's room and finds him laughing with his new friends, connected in a way Ian never was. For a moment, he isn't angry. He's just lost. He stands in the hallway like a ghost, realizing he no longer has a place in Stevie's life. The house, once his kingdom, now feels like Stevie's. Meanwhile, the cracks in the friend group are beginning to widen. Ruben, who once acted like a gatekeeper to the crew, has lost his grip on control. He watches as Stevie, Sunburn, becomes the new favorite. He doesn't say it outright, but it festers. You can see it in the way he talks to Stevie, the way his compliments come laced with backhanded jabs. Ruben is struggling to find where he fits now that he's no longer the cool kid bringing in the newcomer. The more Stevie thrives, the more Ruben seems to shrink. And in the world these kids live in, shrinking is dangerous. It makes you a target. Ray, the crew's quiet leader, starts to emerge more clearly as the film's moral compass. While Fuckshit leans further into the party lifestyle, drinking heavily, pushing boundaries, skating less and spiraling more, Ray remains focused. Skating isn't just fun for him. It's a way out, a future. He sees the crew for what they are, raw potential on the edge of self-destruction. And he sees Stevie for what he could be, if someone just took the time to guide him. There's a quiet conversation between Ray and Stevie that stands out. Ray tells Stevie that the people who give you the hardest time are usually the ones hurting the most. It's a line that hits hard, not just because it's true, but because it feels like Ray is speaking from experience. He's not just talking about Ruben or Fuckshit. He's talking about himself. But Fuckshit can't or won't see the writing on the wall. He's the kind of person who wants the good times to last forever, who thinks that if you laugh loud enough and party hard enough, the world can't touch you. And when Ray begins distancing himself, Fuckshit takes it personally. He lashes out, mocking Ray's seriousness, accusing him of forgetting where he came from. The friction between them is subtle but undeniable. The crew is changing, and not everyone's ready for it. The climax of this slow-burning tension comes one night when the crew piles into a car, high, drunk, hyped up, untouchable. It's a scene that crackles with a terrifying kind of energy. You can feel something coming. The jokes are louder. The music is blasting. And in the back seat, Stevie's eyes shine with a cocktail of excitement and fear. He's in. He's one of them. But at what cost? Then impact. It happens in an instant. A devastating crash. Metal twisting. Glass shattering. Silence. The screen goes black. When it fades back in, the mood has changed completely. There's no music. No laughter. Just a hospital room, white and sterile. Stevie lies unconscious, battered and broken. His mother sits beside him, her face a mask of grief and exhaustion. This isn't just another fall on a skateboard. This is different. This is real. And for the first time, everyone feels it. The accident becomes the film's emotional fulcrum. It strips away all the bravado, all the posturing. The crew visits Stevie, one by one, humbled, quiet. Even Fuckshit, eyes glassy, voice low. There are no speeches, no declarations, just presence. Just the acknowledgement that this world they've created, this cocoon of rebellion and freedom, can't always protect them. And in this raw, unguarded moment, something beautiful happens. Ray gives fourth grade's camera to Stevie. A quiet gesture almost easy to miss, but it speaks volumes. It's a transfer of perspective. A reminder that Stevie isn't just part of this story, he's survived it. He has a say in how it gets remembered. The film doesn't end with fanfare. There's no epilogue explaining where everyone ended up. It closes, instead, with the soft whir of a VHS tape as fourth grade's homemade skate video plays. We see the crew, laughing, skating, falling, living. Moments that felt disposable while they were happening now carry immense weight. Because we know what they went through. We know what it cost. And there, in that flickering footage, we see Stevie again. Not just a kid desperate to fit in. Not just a younger brother trying to escape his home. But a person in transition. Not fully formed, not yet whole, but on the path. The road ahead isn't clear, and it isn't safe. But it's his. What Mid90s captures so brilliantly in its final act is the messy beauty of becoming. There are no easy answers. No perfect resolutions. Just fragments of joy and pain, woven together into something achingly human. It shows that growing up isn't about conquering your demons. It's about learning to live with them. About finding connection in unlikely places. About understanding that even the people who hurt you might be hurting more than you know. And so the credits roll, not on a high note, not on a low one, but on a real one. A feeling that lingers. A story that resonates. Because we've all been Stevie. We've all tried to belong. We've all taken risks we weren't ready for. And if we're lucky, we've all found a crew, however broken, however imperfect, who helped us through the fall. In the sun-drenched haze of Mid90s, amidst scraped knees and the whir of skateboard wheels against concrete, the characters aren't just players in a coming-of-age story. They are the heartbeat of it. Every grimace, every laugh, every unspoken look pulses with unfiltered emotion, pulling us into a world so authentic it often feels less like a movie and more like a memory. At the center of it all is Stevie, small for his age, quiet, watching, a kid on the cusp of adolescence, trapped in a home that's more battlefield than sanctuary. From the very beginning, Stevie is searching for freedom, for identity, for a place where he doesn't have to flinch every time someone raises their voice. His older brother Ian towers over him like a looming threat, and his mother Dabney, though well-meaning, is too wrapped up in her own storm to offer shelter. So Stevie drifts, yearning for connection, and when he stumbles upon a ragtag group of older skateboarders outside a shop called Motor Avenue, the gravitational pull is immediate. Sonny Suljic's portrayal of Stevie is nothing short of revelatory. His performance feels instinctual, almost untouched by the mechanics of acting. It's the way he looks up from beneath his mop of curls, soaking in every word like it's sacred. The way he smiles just a little too long, trying to prove he belongs. There's a purity in Stevie that makes his descent into rebellion all the more painful to watch. You want to protect him, to stop him before the cigarettes, the booze, the drugs. But you also understand why he says yes to all of it. Because for once, he's being seen. And yet, Stevie isn't simply a vessel for adolescent angst. He's layered. He's tender with Ray, competitive with Ruben, blindly devoted to fuckshit, and increasingly distant from the home that once defined him. His journey is marked by physical scars and emotional bruises. But there's growth, too. Subtle, unspoken growth. The kind you only recognize in hindsight, like realizing the training wheels are gone long after the bike's already moving. By the end, Stevie hasn't conquered his pain. He's learned to carry it. And that quiet resilience is what makes him unforgettable. Then there's Ray, portrayed with soulful restraint by Knockhell Smith. Ray is the kind of friend everyone needs at least once in their life. Grounded, wise beyond his years, a lighthouse in a storm of reckless youth. While the others chase chaos, Ray moves with intention. For him, skating isn't a rebellion. It's salvation, a craft, a future. You sense that he's seen darkness, more than he lets on, and now he's building something brighter, one trick at a time. His bond with Stevie becomes the emotional spine of the film. Not just mentorship, but kinship. Ray sees in Stevie a reflection of his younger self. Lost, hurt, searching, and he offers guidance not with lectures, but with presence, with silence, with consistency. That moment when he gently tells Stevie that the toughest people are usually the most hurt, that isn't just advice. It's a lifeline. Contrast that with Fuckshit, played by Prenatt in a performance that practically radiates off the screen. He's charisma incarnate. Loud, wild, unapologetically alive. Fuckshit is the guy who makes you laugh even when you shouldn't. The one who shows up with a six-pack and a story you can't believe actually happened. But beneath the bravado is someone teetering on the edge. You can see it in the way his jokes get a little too loud, his highs a little too manic. He's trying to outrun something, maybe fear, maybe failure, maybe both, and he's using fun as fuel. But that fuel runs out. And when it does, the crash is hard. His rift with Ray isn't about one bad night or one argument. It's the culmination of a deeper divide. One wants to grow, the other wants to escape. And when fuckshit spirals, it isn't dramatic. It's tragic. Because we all know someone like him. Someone so full of life it hurts to watch them self-destruct. Ruben, played with raw sensitivity by Gio Galicia, is perhaps the most quietly heartbreaking character in the film. First, he's cocky, confident. The kid who welcomes Stevie in, shows him the ropes, teaches him how to be cool. But that coolness is a shield. A thin, fragile shell covering a well of insecurity. As Stevie rises in the crew's hierarchy, Ruben begins to unravel. His taunts turn sharper. His jokes come with a sting. He lashes out, not because he hates Stevie, but because he's terrified of being left behind. Ruben is a kid stuck between two versions of himself, the leader he thought he was, and the follower he's becoming. And when he finally breaks down, showing the pain that's been bubbling beneath the surface, it's devastating. Because it reminds us that even the bullies have scars. Fourth grade is the quiet observer, the lens through which the crew is immortalized. Played with gentle awkwardness by Ryder McLaughlin, he barely speaks, yet says so much. Always holding a camcorder, he's the documentarian of their adolescence. The kid who watches, records, and feels deeply without ever needing the spotlight. His presence is subtle, almost background at times, but he's the glue holding the group together. The moment when he screens his video at the end, pieced together from their chaotic lives, isn't just a nod to nostalgia. It's a reminder that memory, even messy memory, is worth preserving. Fourth grade's gift to Stevie and to us is perspective. A way to remember not just the pain, but the joy. At home, the dynamic between Stevie, his mom Dabney, and brother Ian forms the emotional counterweight to his life on the streets. Dabney, played with understated emotion by Catherine Waterston, is far from a one-note parent. She's loving, yes, but also flawed, overwhelmed, occasionally out of her depth. She's trying to hold onto her son while dealing with her own baggage. And her attempts at connection, though clumsy, come from a place of fierce love. The scene where she storms into the skate shop, demanding answers from Stevie's new friends, isn't about control. It's about fear. Pure maternal fear. And when she sees how they look at Stevie, not as a joke or a burden, but as one of their own, you can almost see her heartbreak mix with reluctant understanding. She doesn't trust them, but she knows they've given her son something she couldn't. Ian, on the other hand, is the storm Stevie first learns to weather. Lucas Hedges delivers a performance brimming with tension. He's unpredictable, wounded, and deeply confused about how to love. His aggression toward Stevie isn't just about dominance. It's a cry for help, for attention, for control in a life where he feels increasingly powerless. Watching his little brother become someone else, someone stronger, braver, even admired, it shakes Ian to his core. There's no grand reconciliation between them, no tearful hug, but there are moments, brief, flickering moments, like when Ian leaves orange juice by Stevie's bedside. Silent offerings of care, remnants of a bond that, though fractured, still exists. What Jonah Hill crafts so deftly with these characters is a tapestry of wounded souls trying to find light in each other. No one is wholly good or wholly bad. They're just kids, lost, angry, joyful, and hopeful all at once. And the cast, many of whom were first-time actors, bring a level of authenticity that seasoned veterans would envy. There are no performances here, only lives, lived fully, messily, honestly. Every laugh shared between Stevie and Fuckshit, every wordless nod from Ray, every lingering stare from Ruben. It all adds up to something that transcends plot, something that feels like truth. These characters don't just exist in the frame. They exist. Period. Because Mid90s isn't just a story about skateboarding or rebellion or adolescence. It's about people. The ones who shape us. The ones we try to become. The ones we leave behind. And most of all, the ones who show up, whether with a skateboard, a camera, or a carton of orange juice when we need them most. There's something fascinating about how Mid90s invites you in so effortlessly. It feels raw, spontaneous, almost like a found artifact from a forgotten era. But beneath its loose, sun-washed style lies a tapestry woven with subtle flourishes, cultural callbacks, and emotional breadcrumbs that reward those who are truly paying attention. Jonah Hill may have presented his film as a slice-of-life love letter to youth, but the artistry is precise, and the world he builds is filled with intricate, intentional choices that elevate every frame. You begin to notice it right from the very first shot. Stevie's bedroom is a time capsule, packed with little treasures that immediately date the film. But more than that, they reflect exactly who he is and what he's missing. The orange and blue Nickelodeon sheets, the Mortal Kombat poster, the CD collection stacked neatly on a shelf. All of it screams Mid90s, sure, but it also whispers something more. Childhood clinging to the edges of his world. These aren't just props. They're a quiet rebellion against the chaos outside his room. And yet, he's already starting to drift. The subtle juxtaposition of his childlike surroundings with his bruised, guarded demeanor tells us that Stevie is straddling two worlds. The innocence he's desperate to escape and the adulthood he doesn't yet understand. Then there's the soundtrack. More than just a collection of era-appropriate hits, it functions like a second narrator. The inclusion of classic 90s hip-hop tracks, from the laid-back groove of Souls of Mischief's 93 till Infinity, to the harder edge of Mobb Deep and Wu-Tang, does more than set the mood. It roots the film in a specific cultural reality, one in which music was both escape and identity. When Stevie first walks into the skate shop and hears the blare of hip-hop echoing off the walls, it's not just ambience, it's initiation. That sound becomes a new heartbeat, a new rhythm he learns to move to. And the deeper he falls in with the group, the more that soundtrack envelopes him. It's no accident that the more aggressive tracks start playing when he begins pushing boundaries. Smoking, drinking, jumping off rooftops. The music becomes an extension of his descent, or perhaps his awakening. Jonah Hill, ever meticulous, peppers the film with little nods to skate culture that only insiders might catch. The trick names aren't dumbed down. The slang is never explained. When Ray references pro skaters or famous spots, Hill trusts the audience to either understand or feel the authenticity through osmosis. But buried even deeper are the references that go beyond homage. They're layered into the very structure of the movie. Ray's style and calm demeanor, for instance, echoes the late Harold Hunter from Kids, 1995, a film Hill has cited as a touchstone. The group dynamic, their aimless wandering, the way they congregate at skate spots, are all spiritual echoes of that earlier generation of street kids. But where Kids was nihilistic and grim, Mid90s threads its darkness with empathy and introspection. It's as if Hill is reimagining the culture he grew up loving, trying to humanize it without softening its edges. And speaking of Kids, the casting of Nakel Smith as Ray is itself a kind of cultural callback. Smith, a professional skater with roots in Supreme and the skate collective Illegal Civilization, brings a credibility that bleeds into every scene. His calm presence on screen mirrors his real-life reputation, and his influence shapes Stevie's arc just as much behind the scenes as it does within the narrative. Similarly, Olin Prenatt, who plays Fuckshit, is known for his bold fashion and wild energy in the skate world, and that authenticity explodes in every frame he's in. These aren't actors pretending to skate. They're skaters living out characters who aren't far removed from who they once were or still are. Subtle visual cues are everywhere if you know where to look. The color palette, for instance, is soaked in warm yellows and browns, evoking the look of old home videos and Polaroid photographs. This isn't just aesthetic, it's emotional. It lulls you into nostalgia, making you remember a version of the 90s that feels safer, even if the story itself is anything but. It's why the film was shot on Super 16mm rather than digital. That grain, that softness, that flicker in the corners of the frame, they all conjure memory rather than documentation. You don't just see the 90s here. You feel them. The use of fourth grade's camera as a recurring motif carries a deeper symbolic weight. 2. He's the one capturing the moments everyone else lives through thoughtlessly. And when we finally see his edited skate video at the end, raw clips stitched together with an almost poetic rhythm, it mirrors the very act Jonah Hill is engaging in. Fourth grade, in many ways, is a stand-in for Hill himself. Observing, documenting, finding meaning in chaos. That final montage isn't just a recap of the film. It's a reframing, a statement that says, even in our messiest moments, there's beauty worth remembering. There are smaller moments of foreshadowing that slip by on first watch but click into place in retrospect. Early on, when Stevie mimics his brother's behavior, touching his things, imitating his swagger, it feels like standard sibling rivalry. But it's more than that. This groundwork. Stevie is trying on masks, and Ian is the first one he tries to emulate, no matter how abusive that influence may be. Later, when Stevie begins yelling at his mom or fighting with Ruben, those early scenes snap into focus. He's inherited the anger, the violence, the confusion. It wasn't random, it was taught. And when you look at the way Hill stages violence throughout the film, there's a pattern. Every outburst is sudden, ugly, and deeply human. There's no stylization, no cool choreography. Fights break out not with music cues, but with silence. You feel every hit because Hill wants you to. He wants you to question where that pain is coming from. And the answer is often buried in the smallest exchanges. A bruise on Stevie's side. A moment when Ian recoils from his mother's touch. These aren't plot devices. They're inherited traumas playing out through young boys who've never been given the tools to heal. Even the title itself, Mid90s, functions like an Easter egg. It's not just a timestamp. It's a thesis. A period when the world felt raw and new and dangerous. When kids raised themselves and every day felt like the edge of something monumental. It's not a nostalgic title. It's an anchoring one. It reminds you that this story could only happen in that window before cell phones, before social media, when your world was as big as your block and as wild as your friendships allowed it to be. One of the most clever hidden details comes during Stevie's slow-motion fall from the rooftop. It's filmed like a moment of triumph at first. He's conquered fear, he's earned respect. But the silence that follows, the way time seems to slow, foreshadows the crash that's coming later. It's a metaphor in motion. What goes up must come down. And Stevie, drunk on belonging, is flying too close to the sun. Later, after the car crash, there's a quiet scene in the hospital room that doesn't draw attention to itself. But if you look closely, the orange juice left by Ian carries the weight of 1,000 apologies. There are no big speeches, no reconciliations, just juice, the same kind Stevie was seen drinking earlier in the film. It's a callback not just to routine, but to childhood, to care, to a bond that refuses to break, even under the weight of violence. That single detail tells you more about Ian's internal transformation than any monologue ever could. Even Ruben's arc, often overshadowed by Stevie's, is laced with subtle cues. His clothing becomes more disheveled, his insults more biting, his laughter less frequent. It's easy to miss unless you're watching his eyes, constantly searching, often darting to Stevie for affirmation. Ruben's breakdown isn't a moment. It's a slow erosion, and Hill charts it through visual cues, background shots, even the way Ruben sits in group scenes. Slowly edged out of the circle, no longer in the center. And behind all of this, hidden like the bones of the house it lives in, is the script's restraint. Hill's decision to let things linger, to leave moments unfinished, to favor silence over explanation, is one of the film's most powerful Easter eggs in itself. You begin to realize that the movie isn't about what's said. It's about what's left unsaid. The way a look from Ray carries more wisdom than any lecture. The way fourth grade's camcorder says more than his dialogue. The way Stevie's scream in the bathroom, silent, gut-wrenching, echoes louder than any fight scene ever could. These are the layers that make Mid90s a film you don't just watch once. You live with it, revisit it, and each time it gives you something new. A gesture, a reference, a detail tucked away in the corner of the frame. It rewards your attention. It honors your curiosity. because that's the real magic of this movie. On the surface, it's a story about skateboards and scraped knees. But beneath that, it's a map of memory. A document of pain and joy and all the blurry spaces in between. And if you're willing to look a little closer, to slow down, to really see, there's a whole world waiting to be discovered. What makes Mid90s such a captivating experience isn't just what appears on screen. It's the story behind how it all came together. In many ways, the making of this film mirrors the very journey of its protagonist. Chaotic, unexpected, driven by instinct, and fueled by an aching desire to be understood. Jonah Hill didn't just write and direct his first feature film. He cracked open a personal time capsule and invited the world inside. But the path from idea to execution was filled with strange detours, wild improvisation, and surprising challenges that shaped the raw authenticity of every scene. Let's start with the most unexpected element of all. Jonah Hill, the comedy powerhouse known for Superbad and 21 Jump Street, making a dramatic coming-of-age movie set in 1990s skate culture. It wasn't just a left turn. It was a full 180. For years, Hill had dreamed of making a film that felt personal, grounded, and emotionally sincere. But what surprised everyone, even some of his closest collaborators, was just how serious he was about getting it right. He immersed himself in film theory, studied under master directors like Scorsese, who once called Hill one of the most naturally gifted actors of his generation, and took nearly 4 years to write the script, not because it was difficult to write, but because he kept rewriting, paring it down, stripping away anything that felt false. The result? A script that feels less like fiction and more like a diary entry someone left under their bed. But Hill didn't stop at the writing. He wanted the film to feel lived in. That meant working with real skaters, not trained actors. It was a risky move, one that could have easily sunk the project. Yet it's precisely what gives the film its soul. Casting director Allison Jones, a legend in her own right, responsible for discovering talents like Jonah himself, scoured the skate world for months. She and Hill turned to the tight-knit world of LA skaters, eventually landing on names like Knockhell Smith, Olin Prenatt, Ryder McLaughlin, and Gio Galicia, none of whom had ever acted before. That wasn't a problem. In fact, it was the point. Hill didn't want polished performances. He wanted truth, and truth came with its own chaos. The set, by design, felt less like a movie production and more like a hangout. Hill insisted that the energy remain loose, playful, and full of real connection. Cast members were encouraged to improvise, to bring their own style, and even to influence the dialogue. Scenes weren't always planned out beat for beat. Sometimes the best moments came when the cameras were just rolling, capturing interactions that felt spontaneous and pure. One particularly memorable shot, Stevie getting lifted up and cheered on by his new crew after a rooftop jump, was totally unscripted. The reaction was real. The joy was real. And Hill kept the cameras running just long enough to bottle that feeling like lightning. That rooftop jump, by the way, wasn't entirely planned either. Sonny Suljic, who plays Stevie, was only 11 when they filmed it, and the stunt was incredibly dangerous. But Suljic, who happens to be a real-life skateboard prodigy sponsored by Nike SB, was fearless. The scene required him to leap from a roof into a pile of mattresses padded with foam just off-camera. Despite the precautions, there was still risk involved. Hill consulted multiple stunt coordinators and made sure Suljic's parents were on board. And yet, in true skater spirit, Sonny didn't hesitate. That moment captures so much of what made the film special. Authenticity trumping convention, guts over gloss. Speaking of Sonny, his casting was another story filled with surprises. Originally, Hill wasn't sure he'd be able to find a young actor who could carry the emotional weight of the film and skateboard convincingly. But Suljic walked in and immediately stunned the room. He had the look, the talent, and most importantly, the sensitivity to bring Stevie to life. Hill was so struck by Suljic's emotional range that he rewrote scenes to better reflect his strengths. Some of the most tender moments in the film, like Stevie crying alone in the bathroom, weren't even fully scripted. Hill simply told Suljic the emotional direction and let the moment unfold naturally. The result was raw magic. Behind the camera, the production was just as unconventional. Cinematographer Christopher Blauvelt, known for his work with Kelly Reichardt and Sofia Coppola, shot the entire film on Super 16mm film, giving it that warm, nostalgic glow. But it wasn't just a stylistic choice, it was a logistical challenge. Film stock is expensive and every shot counts. Yet Hill insisted on it, even fighting with producers at times to preserve the analog look. He felt that digital would rob the film of its soul. Blauvelt agreed, and so they shot under natural light whenever possible, often using handheld cameras to maintain that feeling of intimacy and movement. But filming on location in Los Angeles came with its own headaches. Many of the neighborhoods used had changed drastically since the 90s. Hill and his team scouted dozens of spots to find corners of the city that still looked like his childhood. They discovered rundown alleys and hidden skate spots tucked behind apartment complexes. The skate shop, a central hub in the film, was built from scratch inside a rented storefront and stocked with real vintage gear from the 90s, most of which Hill collected himself, either from eBay or friends in the skate world. He even borrowed VHS tapes, mixtapes, and zines from his own collection to decorate the background. And then there was the strange challenge of shooting with real skaters who had no interest in traditional acting discipline. Prenatt, fuckshit, was notorious for wandering off set mid-scene. Sometimes he'd disappear to go skate a nearby rail or mess with props. Jonah didn't mind. He encouraged it. In fact, one of the funniest behind-the-scenes incidents involved Prenatt accidentally knocking over a prop shelf during filming and staying in character the whole time. Hill kept the footage and used it as part of a later scene. The chaos, the unpredictability, it wasn't just tolerated. It was welcomed. But not everything was easygoing. One of the most controversial aspects of the film was its unflinching portrayal of underage drinking, smoking, and sex. Hill was adamant about not sugarcoating these realities. He remembered what it was like growing up during that time, and he didn't want to make a Disney-fied version of it. Critics were divided. Some praised his honesty, while others questioned the ethics of putting such young actors in mature situations. Hill responded by pointing out the double standard in cinema. Violence is often accepted without question, but honest depictions of adolescent confusion and boundary pushing are labeled dangerous. Still, he worked closely with guardians, therapists, and legal advisors to ensure everything was handled with care, especially with Sonny. Interestingly, the film's most emotionally charged scene, the hospital moment after the car crash, almost didn't exist. In early drafts, the film ended with the crash itself, leaving the aftermath ambiguous. But during test screenings, audiences felt a lack of closure. So Hill went back, rewrote the final scenes, and gave the story a gentler landing. It's a good thing he did. That closing moment, with the boys silently gathered in Stevie's hospital room watching fourth grade's video montage, became the film's emotional anchor. The quiet solidarity, the unspoken forgiveness, the way Ian brings Stevie juice without saying a word. It all ties the journey together in a way that lingers long after the credits roll. And if you're wondering whether Jonah Hill still skates, yes, but barely. During filming, he joked that he could barely ollie but loved the culture. He saw himself in Stevie, not just because of the longing to fit in, but because of that same wide-eyed awe toward people who seemed so effortlessly cool. Hill even admitted that making the film was a form of therapy, working through childhood traumas, family dynamics, and the awkward years of trying to define yourself when nothing makes sense. There's also a deeply personal Easter egg hidden in the credits. The name of the film's fictional skate crew, Fuckshit, Ruben, Ray, fourth grade, and Stevie, mirrors real nicknames and dynamics Jonah observed in his own youth. And fourth grade skate video, shown at the end, was edited in the exact lo-fi style Hill used when making VHS montages as a teenager. Even the font used in the title sequence was lifted from Hill's childhood school yearbooks. It's all intentional, all part of a larger effort to root the film not in some generic past, but in his past. The success of Mid90s wasn't guaranteed. Indie dramas about misunderstood kids rarely make waves at the box office. But what set this one apart was how genuine it felt, on screen and off. It wasn't the biggest movie of the year. It wasn't the flashiest. But it was honest, and that honesty came from the mess behind the scenes. The late-night script rewrites, the nervous first-time actors, the broken equipment, the weird location shoots, the improvised lines, the endless skating between takes. All of it bled into the final product. Because sometimes the strangest facts and the hardest challenges are what breathe life into a film. They're not distractions. They're the heartbeat. And in the case of Mid90s, that heartbeat is loud, uneven, sometimes bruised, but always real. There are films that shout at you with spectacle, with visual noise and explosive momentum. And then there's Mid90s, a movie that whispers truths so intimately that you don't even realize how deeply it's affected you until long after the credits roll. It's a film stitched together not by grand twists or heavy exposition, but by moments, quiet, unassuming, yet profoundly human scenes that crawl under your skin and stay there. In breaking down its most critical moments, you begin to see that the magic of Mid90s lies in its ability to turn subtle glances, awkward silences, and raw vulnerability into unforgettable cinematic echoes. It all begins with one of the film's most deceptively simple yet emotionally rich opening moments. Stevie, alone in his room, inspecting his brother's belongings. The space is dense with masculinity. Sneakers meticulously aligned, hip-hop blaring in the background, magazines and paraphernalia stacked like trophies of adolescence. Stevie doesn't touch anything recklessly. He studies it, almost reverently, mirroring the way younger siblings mythologize their older counterparts. This single scene sets the tone for everything that follows. It's not just about skateboards and swearing. It's about identity, longing, and that desperate hunger to belong somewhere, to someone. The emotional weight of Stevie's isolation is quietly enormous, and it becomes the driving force behind every choice he makes throughout the film. One of the film's most critically discussed sequences is Stevie's first hangout with the skate crew at the shop. On paper, it's a casual hang. But beneath the surface, it's a tension-filled audition. Stevie, the outsider, is towing the line between innocence and initiation. The dialogue feels unscripted, ragged around the edges, but that's what gives it its electricity. There's no theatrical arc here, just the fluid power dynamics of adolescence, where a laugh, a nod, or a cruel joke can change everything. When Stevie makes them laugh with an unexpected burst of bravery, it feels monumental. For the first time, he isn't just tolerated, he's accepted. That sense of belonging isn't just narrative progression. It's emotional gravity. It's the heartbeat of the film. But no moment encapsulates the essence of Mid90s more poignantly than Stevie's silent meltdown in the bathroom. After a particularly rough day, an argument with Ian, friction with his mom, and the sting of not fitting in, Stevie locks himself inside, shuts the door, and collapses into sobs. The camera doesn't move. It doesn't cut away. It lingers, letting us feel the full ache of a boy unraveling. There's no soundtrack, no dialogue, just Stevie's muffled cries and the suffocating stillness of his loneliness. This scene is devastating because it's honest. It doesn't explain itself. It doesn't ask for pity. It simply reveals the pain hiding behind the reckless bravado of youth. Critics and audiences alike have cited this moment as one of the most emotionally affecting in the film. Not because of what is said, but because of what isn't. And then there's the house party scene, a turning point that sparked no shortage of debate. On one hand, it's a rite of passage moment. Stevie is initiated into the teenage world of drinking, smoking, and sexual exploration. But it's not filmed with romanticism or exaggerated flair. It's awkward. It's messy. It's uncomfortable. Jonah Hill doesn't glamorize the moment. He presents it as it is, confusing and jarring. The encounter with the older girl, in particular, is complex and controversial. Some saw it as problematic, while others recognized it as a reflection of how blurry and gray those coming-of-age moments can be, especially in the 90s. What matters most is that the scene isn't meant to titillate. It's meant to disorient, to reflect how young Stevie really is, and how quickly he's being thrust into a world he doesn't fully understand. Hill places the audience in the same uncomfortable position Stevie is in, unsure of how to feel. And that, in itself, is the point. Visually, one of the film's standout sequences is Stevie's slow-motion skate through the neighborhood at sunset. It's a dreamlike interlude that offers temporary peace. Backed by Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross's haunting, atmospheric score, the moment glides rather than shouts. For once, Stevie isn't trying to prove himself. He isn't chasing or fleeing anything. He's simply being. The beauty of this scene is how it captures the rare serenity of adolescence. Those fleeting seconds where everything, somehow, feels okay. Hill and cinematographer Christopher Blauvelt orchestrate the shot with such precision and grace that it feels almost spiritual. It's a reminder that among the chaos and confusion, there are still moments of weightless freedom. Yet that freedom comes crashing down in one of the film's most pivotal moments, the car crash. It's sudden, jarring, and brutally realistic. There's no dramatic build-up, no swelling music, just recklessness meeting consequence. The impact is so immediate that it leaves viewers stunned, breathless. This is where the film sheds its coming-of-age skin and exposes the stark fragility beneath. Suddenly, the invincibility of youth is shattered. Stevie is no longer just a kid trying to fit in, he's a kid facing mortality. The tension that follows is suffocating. The hospital visit, Ian's anger, the look in the eyes of the skate crew, it all shifts. Everyone grows up a little in that moment. Audiences praised Hill for his restraint here. He didn't milk the drama. He didn't overplay it. He let the silence speak volumes. The hospital scene, which could have easily slipped into melodrama, is instead rendered with profound stillness. Stevie, bandaged and bruised, sits quietly in his bed. His crew enters, one by one, not with apologies or declarations, but with presence. Fourth grade plays his homemade video montage, a silent gift that says everything they can't. In that montage, we see the entire journey reflected, Stevie's joy, his stumbles, his triumphs, and the bond that formed in between. It's a love letter, not just to Stevie, but to the chaotic brotherhood that saved him. Critics hailed this moment as the emotional high point of the film, not because it was loud, but because it was honest. It feels like the kind of moment that's too personal to be scripted. It's friendship distilled to its purest form, just showing up. Another scene that deserves attention is a quiet confrontation between Ian and Stevie. Their relationship is arguably the most complicated in the film, laced with resentment, envy, and buried affection. In one brief exchange, Ian scolds Stevie for touching his things, but the aggression melts into something more vulnerable. Ian isn't just a bully. He's a broken kid, too, lost in his own confusion, desperate to assert control over a world that no longer makes sense to him. Lucas Hedges plays Ian with staggering depth, burying oceans of emotion behind tight jaws and tense stares. It's a performance that sneaks up on you, revealing new layers with every watch. And that moment, fleeting as it may be, offers a rare glimpse into the pain that binds these brothers. It's a reminder that everyone in this film is wounded in some way, even the ones who pretend to have it all figured out. Throughout Mid90s, Hill returns again and again to themes of masculinity, vulnerability, and the masks we wear. The critical brilliance of the film lies in how it refuses to resolve these ideas neatly. There are no grand declarations, no tidy lessons. Instead, it offers a mirror, distorted, cracked, but honest. You see yourself in these kids, in their mistakes, in their laughter, in their desperate need to feel seen. And it's in that recognition that the film becomes something bigger than nostalgia. It becomes a portrait of growing up in a world that doesn't slow down to explain itself. Audience reactions to Mid90s were deeply divided, not because it failed, but because it dared. It dared to confront uncomfortable truths about youth, gender dynamics, race, class, and emotional suppression. Some praised it as a triumph of realism. Others criticized its depiction of risky behavior. But everyone agreed on one thing: it felt real, felt lived in, and that's why it resonated. Even the critics who pushed back couldn't ignore the raw power of the film's most impactful scenes. They linger, they provoke, they invite reflection. You don't just watch Mid90s. You feel it. You carry it with you. In the way Stevie clutches a skateboard like it's his entire identity. In the way Ian slams his door as if to shut out the entire world. In the way a crew of misfits silently nods to each other because words aren't enough. These are the moments that define the film, not because they're loud or flashy, but because they're true. And in the end, truth is what matters. That's what Jonah Hill gave us. Not a perfect film, but an honest one. A film that captures the messiness of adolescence, the beauty of unlikely friendships, and the aching desire to find your place in a world that never quite fits. The most critical moments in Mid90s don't just tell a story. They remind us of our own. And that, more than anything, is what makes this film unforgettable. Making a film like Mid90s was never about flashy spectacle or technological wizardry. It was about capturing something intangible. The mood of a decade. The texture of growing up. The moments that stick to your memory not because they were loud, but because they were real. And from its very first frame, Mid90s doesn't just tell that story, it makes you feel it. Achieving that required more than nostalgia. It demanded an extraordinary blend of creative discipline, technical restraint, and a deep emotional understanding of what made that era, and that stage of life, so fragile and electrifying. Jonah Hill, stepping behind the camera for his directorial debut, approached the film with a deeply personal lens. Though the characters and story are fictional, the emotional truth of Mid90s is steeped in Hill's own memories of adolescence. This was his love letter to a time when he, like Stevie, sought identity through the culture of skateboarding, music, and misfit friendships. But Hill didn't want to glorify the era or look back at it through rose-colored glasses. He wanted the 90s as they were: rough, raw, awkward, and undeniably real. To achieve that authenticity, Hill made a series of bold stylistic decisions that would define the film's DNA. One of the most immediately striking choices was shooting the film in 16mm with a 4:3 aspect ratio. At first glance, this may seem aesthetic. Lighting setups were often minimal, with scenes shot during golden hour to catch the fleeting warmth of sunlight, or inside cramped rooms lit only by desk lamps and TVs. This stripped-back approach might seem limiting, but it became one of the film's greatest strengths. It allowed the performances and settings to breathe, making every scene feel like a fragment of a memory rather than a polished Hollywood production. Casting was another masterstroke of authenticity. Hill took a massive risk by casting non-actors in nearly every major role except for Lucas Hedges and Catherine Waterston. The core skate crew, Nakel Smith, Ray, Olin Prenatt, Fuckshit, Ryder McLaughlin, 4th grade, and Gio Galicia Rubin, were real skaters, not trained actors. Their performances weren't rehearsed in the traditional sense. They were shaped through trust, observation, and Hill's unorthodox approach to direction. Rather than giving strict lines, Hill often allowed scenes to evolve naturally, encouraging improvisation and letting the actors speak in their own rhythms. Like a purely aesthetic nod to the 90s, but it was far more than that. The square frame, reminiscent of old VHS home videos and skate tapes, traps the characters in a box, reflecting their emotional confinement and their place in time. It forces the viewer to focus on the human element, on faces, eyes, the spaces between words. There's no widescreen grandeur here, just the intimacy of life unfolding, one imperfect moment at a time. Hill tapped cinematographer Christopher Blauvelt, known for his work on The Bling Ring and Meek's Cutoff, to bring this vision to life. Blauvelt's handheld camera work is deliberately loose, almost voyeuristic at times, as if the lens itself is another member of the crew following Stevie around. The camera doesn't command attention, it observes, quietly. Many shots feel spontaneous, even accidental, but every frame is carefully composed to heighten the realism. The sun-bleached streets of Los Angeles, the dimly lit bedrooms, the sweat-drenched summer afternoons. All of it feels tactile, as though you could reach into the screen and feel the heat radiating off the pavement. Hill also insisted on using natural lighting whenever possible, keeping the film grounded and visually consistent with the 90s. Sonny Suljic, who plays Stevie, brought a unique blend of innocence and intensity to the role. Already an experienced young actor, Suljic had also grown up skating, which made him the perfect bridge between the professional and non-professional worlds Hill was uniting. On set, Hill treated Suljic not as a child actor, but as the emotional core of the film, guiding him gently but never over-directing. Much of the emotion that Stevie conveys isn't verbal. It's in the eyes, the pauses, the moments when he's just existing in silence. That quiet expressiveness was key to making the film resonate, and it was only possible because of the deep trust Suljic had in Hill's vision. One of the most unexpected triumphs of the production was the film's sound design and musical score. The auditory landscape of Mid90s is drenched in cultural specificity. From the bass-heavy beats of A Tribe Called Quest and the Far Side to the lo-fi buzz of skate videos playing in the background, every sound feels like it belongs to that world. But perhaps the most surprising element is the original score by Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross. Known for their icy, industrial compositions in films like The Social Network, they took a radically different approach here. Their work in Mid90s is warm, ambient, and subtle, ghost-like synths and minimal melodies that drift through scenes rather than dominate them. The score becomes an emotional undercurrent, reflecting Stevie's inner world as he tries to navigate external chaos. Behind the scenes, shooting on location in Los Angeles presented its own challenges. Rather than building sets, Hill insisted on filming in real houses, real skate spots, and real neighborhoods. The film's central skate shop was a functioning store, redressed for production. The goal was to capture the grit and imperfection of real spaces, and that meant working with tight schedules, limited lighting, and unpredictable street noise. But those very limitations often birthed creative breakthroughs. When a random car passed by during a take, or a dog barked in the distance, Hill would leave it in. These imperfections weren't flaws, they were features. One of the most emotionally layered scenes, Stevie's bathroom breakdown, was shot with almost no crew in the room. Hill wanted to preserve Suljic's vulnerability, so he minimized distractions, setting the camera and stepping back. That intimacy is felt in every frame. You can almost hear the silence pressing in around Stevie. It's a perfect example of how technical restraint can heighten emotional depth. Editing played a crucial role in maintaining the film's rhythm. Nick Harai, who had worked on Lady Bird, brought a similarly delicate touch to Mid90s. The film avoids traditional pacing. It doesn't build toward a single climactic event, but ebbs and flows like life itself. Many scenes fade out gently or end on abrupt notes, mirroring how memories often feel incomplete or fleeting. Hai also had the delicate task of editing skate footage, which Hill wanted to feel real rather than overly choreographed. Much of what you see on screen is raw footage of the cast skating between takes, crashes, sloppy landings, moments of triumph. These weren't stunts. They were expressions of identity. Perhaps the most radical technical decision of all was what Hill chose to leave out. There are no overt montages explaining character backstories. No voiceovers tying themes together. No exposition-laden dialogues spelling things out. Hill trusted the audience to find the story between the lines. That level of narrative restraint is rare for a first-time director, and rarer still in a film about kids, where the temptation is often to dramatize every moment. Instead, Mid90s trusts the quiet. It trusts that a glance, a bruise, or a shared laugh can say everything that needs to be said. Even the credits, rolled over fourth grade's home-edited skate video, speak to the film's unfiltered ethos. That montage wasn't outsourced to a professional team. It was shot and edited in character by Ryder McLaughlin, using lo-fi techniques and handheld gear. The result is a deeply personal reflection on the journey Stevie and his crew have taken, one that mirrors the audience's journey through the film itself. It's playful, chaotic, and strangely moving, wrapping the story in a homemade ribbon of brotherhood and memory. In the end, the greatest technical achievement of Mid90s may be its invisibility. There are no obvious camera tricks, no digital wizardry, no grand production flourishes. Everything is designed to disappear, to make you forget you're watching a film at all. That's what makes it special. Every frame, every decision, every note of music exists in service of emotional truth. Doesn't look like a movie, feels like a memory. And that, more than any piece of equipment or filmmaking trend, is what sets Mid90s apart. Beneath the gritty veneer of concrete streets and scraped knees, Mid90s pulses with a quiet depth that lingers long after the credits roll. What at first glance may seem like a coming-of-age tale centered on skateboarding and rebellion slowly reveals itself to be a richly textured meditation on identity, masculinity, belonging, and the fragile architecture of youth. Jonah Hill's directorial debut doesn't preach or spell out its meanings. Instead, it weaves its messages into the fabric of the everyday. using silence, glances, music, and movement to say the things that words often cannot. In doing so, the film becomes more than a nostalgic snapshot. It becomes a mirror, reflecting both the universal and the deeply personal. At its heart, Mid90s is a story about searching for connection in a world that doesn't quite know how to offer it. Stevie, the film's quiet protagonist, is not just a kid looking to fit in. He's a boy absorbing pain, confusion, and loneliness, desperately trying to alchemize them into something like meaning. His home life is tense and unpredictable, marked by an emotionally distant mother and a physically abusive older brother, Ian. The violence Ian inflicts on Stevie is never fully explained, but it doesn't need to be. It's the language of unresolved trauma, passed down, perhaps, from their absent father, or born out of Ian's own confusion and helplessness. This unspoken cycle of hurt becomes one of the film's most haunting undercurrents. How pain, when unprocessed, echoes through generations, often disguised as anger, silence, or control. It's in this environment that Stevie stumbles into the world of skating, a world that, while chaotic and imperfect, offers him something resembling freedom. The skate crew, Ray, Fuckshit, fourth grade, and Ruben, become his surrogate family. Each of them carries their own burdens, and the dynamic among them is far from ideal, but within their crude jokes and shared adventures is a kind of unspoken acceptance. They don't ask Stevie to be anything other than present. In a life where he's constantly trying to figure out how to behave, what to say, or how to defend himself, that acceptance feels revolutionary. Skateboarding, in this context, becomes more than a sport, it becomes a symbol. A metaphor for rebellion, yes, but more importantly, for self-determination. You fall. You bleed. You get back up. No one can do it for you, and no one can take it away. That image of falling and rising again is repeated throughout the film, not just in literal skate tricks but in emotional terms. Stevie falls hard, both physically and metaphorically. His body is often bruised, his ego wounded, his sense of identity constantly shifting. He experiments with smoking, drinking, and even sex, not out of real desire but out of a need to belong. These aren't just scenes of youthful indulgence. They're desperate acts of mimicry. He watches the older boys and tries to become them, believing that toughness and recklessness are the currencies of manhood. But every time he goes too far, the consequences quietly pile up. His hospital bed near the film's end becomes the ultimate symbol, not of defeat, but of transformation. It's not the end of the road. It's a moment of reckoning, a pause, a space where the real growing up begins. Masculinity in Mid90s is a raw and often troubling force. It is loud, competitive, performative. The boys constantly insult each other, test boundaries, and use slurs without understanding their weight. But behind the bravado is fragility. Boys who don't know how to talk about their feelings, so they bury them under humor and aggression. Ray is the only character who seems to grasp this dynamic. In one of the film's most important moments, he pulls Stevie aside and speaks honestly. He talks about the pain each member of their group carries. Ruben, for instance, has a mother who is an addict. Fuckshit is clearly drowning in his own need for attention. Fourth grade is quieter than the rest, but Ray sees him too. This moment doesn't just humanize the crew. It reveals one of the film's most essential truths. Everyone is going through something, whether they show it or not. That line, "You don't know what people are going through," resonates like a mantra. It's the kind of wisdom that often comes too late, after the damage has already been done. But in Mid90s, it arrives just in time. It helps reframe Stevie's journey, not as a descent into rebellion, but as an ascent toward empathy. He begins the film wanting to escape pain, to disappear into someone else's life. He ends it not necessarily healed, but aware. Aware that the people around him are not as invincible as they seem. That no one has it all figured out. That sometimes, just surviving the day is its own kind of triumph. Symbolism plays a subtle but significant role throughout the film. The orange juice Stevie drinks in an early scene becomes a kind of comfort object, simple, childlike, and warm. It's one of the few moments where we see him at peace, before the bruises start to add up. Later, as he begins to shift into adolescence, that kind of innocent comfort fades. The juice is replaced by alcohol, by cigarettes, by vices that promise adulthood but never quite deliver it. Similarly, the act of skating itself, repetitive, obsessive, painful, mirrors Stevie's emotional state. He doesn't skate for fun. He skates to prove something, to punish himself, to feel something that isn't invisible. And yet, through that pain he grows. The scabs on his body are badges of belonging, but they're also proof of survival. The film also subtly critiques the myth of the cool older kid, a trope that so many coming-of-age stories glorify. Ruben, who first takes Stevie under his wing, quickly turns cold once Stevie starts to gain attention from the others. His insecurity bubbles up as aggression, revealing how fragile that coolness really is. And Fuckshit, with his charisma and swagger, is slowly revealed to be trapped in a cycle of self-destruction. Ray sees it. Stevie begins to see it too. The film doesn't condemn these characters. It understands them, but it also doesn't romanticize them. It simply shows them, warts and all, and lets us decide what lessons to take. From a cultural standpoint, Mid90s is a time capsule. But not in the way that most nostalgia-driven films are. It doesn't idealize the 90s, it interrogates them. The casual use of offensive language, the absence of smartphones, the reliance on analog spaces like skate shops and local hangouts. All of it paints a world that is both freer and more ignorant. A world where kids had more room to mess up, but also less support when they did. Hill doesn't shy away from the problematic aspects of that era, especially in the way boys talk to and about each other. But he also captures the beauty of it. The way community was built face to face, the sacredness of mixtapes, the poetry of skating down an empty street with nothing but music in your headphones. Even the character of fourth grade serves as a symbol of storytelling itself. Always behind the camera, always observing, he seems like the odd one out until the final scene when we watch his edited footage. Suddenly, everything snaps into place. He was watching because he cared, because stories matter, because capturing a moment, preserving it, sharing it, that's a kind of love. In that sense, fourth grade is a stand-in for Hill himself. A quiet observer turned storyteller. Someone who found a voice by watching others find theirs. Ultimately, Mid90s isn't about the 90s at all. It's about the moments that make us. The tiny heartbreaks and invisible victories. The friendships that don't last but shape us forever. The lies we tell ourselves to survive, and the truths we discover when we finally stop running. It's a film that understands growing up is not a clean arc. It's messy, non-linear, and often contradictory. One step forward, two steps back. A scraped knee, a stolen cigarette, a shared laugh. All of it counts. All of it matters. And in that way, Mid90s becomes a kind of poetry, jagged, imperfect, but deeply human. Its themes don't hit you all at once. They settle in gradually, like a bruise that reveals itself the next day. But when they do hit, they stay. They remind you of the boy you were, the people who shaped you, and the version of yourself you're still becoming. That's the real magic of this film. Not its style or soundtrack or cast, but its soul. Sometimes, the most powerful performances aren't born in rehearsal rooms or through meticulously polished technique. They emerge in the raw, unfiltered energy between people who don't yet realize the impact they're creating together. That's exactly what happened with Mid90s. Jonah Hill, in his directorial debut, made an unconventional but deeply intentional choice. Instead of casting polished Hollywood actors for his core ensemble, he sought out real-life skaters, many of whom had never acted before. What this risk gave him was not just authenticity, but alchemy. A dynamic, unspoken chemistry that made every interaction in the film feel lived in, improvised, and heartbreakingly real. Sonny Suljic, who plays Stevie, was perhaps the only actor on set with prior film experience, having already appeared in The Killing of a Sacred Deer. Yet even with that, he was still a kid, quiet, wide-eyed, instinctual. Jonah Hill has often talked about how Sonny carried the emotional burden of the film, not just in dialogue, but in presence. He didn't perform emotions in the traditional sense. He allowed them to pass through him. His chemistry with the rest of the cast wasn't built through acting workshops or rehearsed bonding exercises. It was built the old-fashioned way, hanging out, skating, spending time together off camera. The result is a performance that never feels calculated. When Stevie stares at Ray with admiration, or trades jokes with Ruben, or silently absorbs a wound after a harsh exchange, it feels like you're watching real interactions, not scripted ones. Knockhell Smith, who played Ray, had never acted in a movie before. A well-known skater and rapper, Smith brought a quiet gravitas to the role that grounded the entire group. In real life, he was the older skater that younger kids looked up to, so the transition into Ray was seamless. There's a natural authority to his presence, a calmness that makes every word he delivers feel weighted. His bond with Sonny Suljic, both on and off screen, became the emotional spine of the movie. Hill has spoken about how Smith took on a sort of big brother role to Sonny behind the scenes as well, gently guiding him, keeping him grounded. That real relationship bled into the film in the best way. You can see it in their scenes together, how Stevie instinctively leans toward Ray, how Ray protects him in small, wordless ways. It's the kind of chemistry you can't fake. Olin Prenatt, cast as the loud and reckless fuckshit, was another non-actor pulled from the world of skating. His performance is pure energy, explosive, chaotic, and at times heartbreaking. On set, Olin was known for his wild personality, his constant improvisation, and his magnetic unpredictability. But what makes his role so compelling isn't just his ability to be funny or reckless. It's the subtle vulnerability underneath. Jonah Hill gave Olin space to explore that contrast, allowing moments of silence or self-doubt to shine through. His dynamic with Knockhell Smith mirrored the tension between fuckshit and Ray, two friends whose paths begin to diverge as one seeks growth while the other clings to the illusion of perpetual adolescence. Their chemistry crackles with both affection and volatility, reflecting the way male friendships can be both intimate and brittle. Then there's Gio Galicia as Ruben, the first kid who invites Stevie into the crew, and the first to push him away. Ruben is not a villain, but a boy struggling to maintain his place in a shifting social hierarchy. Joe's performance walks a delicate line, portraying Ruben's jealousy without ever making him unsympathetic. His tension with Stevie feels especially real because it was real. Gio and Sonny, during early rehearsals, didn't immediately click. Jonah Hill, recognizing the potential in that unease, leaned into it. He encouraged the actors to channel their awkwardness into their characters. As their relationship evolved in real life, so did the arc of Ruben and Stevie. By the time the cameras were rolling, the emotional friction between them felt deeply authentic. And of course, there's Ryder McLaughlin as fourth grade, the soft-spoken cameraman of the group, always filming but rarely speaking. Ryder was perhaps the most introverted of the cast, both on and off screen, and Jonah Hill used that to his advantage. He encouraged Ryder to stay quiet, to stay observing, to let the others bounce off of him. The result is a character who says very little but leaves a lasting impression. Fourth grade is the heart of the group in a way none of them recognize until the very end. The final montage, his homemade video stitched together from their shared moments, serves as a beautiful testament to his role, both within the crew and within the story itself. That was Ryder's real footage, by the way. Hill gave him a camcorder and let him film for real. It wasn't just a prop, it was part of the process. Behind the scenes, Jonah Hill fostered an environment unlike most traditional film sets. He encouraged improvisation. He created a safe space where the kids could be themselves. He didn't just direct them, he listened to them. He invited them into the creative process, asking them how they'd say certain lines, how they'd react in real life. This collaborative energy transformed the film. It gave it a pulse. The boys weren't delivering someone else's version of youth. They were offering their own. Hill reportedly even had them live together during production, helping to create natural bonds and tensions that mirrored their characters. They skated together, ate together, got in arguments, made up. By the time filming began, they were a crew. Lucas Hedges, who plays Ian, Stevie's older brother, deserves special mention. Unlike the rest of the cast, Hedges was an experienced actor, coming off acclaimed performances in films like Manchester by the Sea. His inclusion might seem like a mismatch on paper, but it provided the perfect counterbalance. Hedges' portrayal of Ian is complex and disarming. He's angry, unpredictable, but never cartoonishly violent. He's a boy, barely out of adolescence himself, trying and failing to contain his emotions. His scenes with Sunny are difficult to watch because they feel so unfiltered. There's a moment, brief but unforgettable, where Ian quietly breaks down after hitting Stevie. It's a rare crack in his armor, and it lands because Hedges doesn't overplay it. His presence added a different texture to the film, a reminder of the emotional wreckage that lies just outside the skate park. Katherine Waterston, who plays Stevie's mother, Dabney, brings a quiet vulnerability to her role. While her screen time is limited, every moment she's on camera matters. She's not the cliché neglectful parent of teen dramas. She's overwhelmed, working, trying, failing, and trying again. Waterston imbues her with empathy. The scene where she confronts Ray and the crew for corrupting her son could have been one note, but instead, it's layered. She's scared, but also mourning the distance growing between her and her child. That pain is real, and it anchors the film in a deeper emotional reality. As for audience reactions, Mid90s struck a nerve. Upon its release in October 2018, it quickly became a talking point among critics, cinephiles, and everyday viewers alike. Some praised its raw authenticity, its tactile nostalgia, its refusal to sanitize the chaos of adolescence. Others questioned its handling of controversial topics, the use of slurs, the early sexual encounter Stevie experiences, the casual cruelty between characters. But even the criticisms were a testament to the film's power. It made people feel. It started conversations. And for many viewers, particularly those who grew up skating or came of age in the 90s, it was like watching a fragment of their own lives reflected back at them. Skateboarding communities embraced the film with pride. It didn't treat them like caricatures. It gave them space to be messy, funny, misunderstood, and human. Online forums buzzed with stories from skaters recounting their own early friendships, injuries, and emotional growing pains. Fan art, edits, and tributes to characters like Ray and Stevie began circulating. The final scene, where the crew silently watches fourth grade's video montage, became a touchstone moment, frequently cited as one of the most moving scenes in coming-of-age cinema. That final shot, where we see Stevie smile, tired, bandaged, but accepted, resonated with anyone who ever felt like an outsider, anyone who ever found family in unlikely places. Critics praised Hill's debut as surprisingly mature, tonally bold, and refreshingly patient. It was compared to the early works of Richard Linklater and Larry Clark, with nods to Kids, Boyhood, and Dazed and Confused. But where Kids was intentionally shocking and voyeuristic, Mid90s felt more introspective, more empathetic. It didn't judge its characters. It simply observed them, allowing the audience to draw their own conclusions. In the years since its release, the film's reputation has only grown. It continues to find new viewers through streaming platforms and word of mouth. It's often cited in conversations about the best coming-of-age films of the 2010s, and its influence can be felt in other youth-centric projects that strive for authenticity over polish. What Jonah Hill captured wasn't just a moment in time, it was a feeling, a yearning, a sense of being young, lost, hopeful, and scared. What Mid90s accomplishes is rare. It captures a very specific moment in time while speaking to something timeless. It bridges generations. It connects people who came of age on different streets, in different cities, under different circumstances, and reminds us that growing up is always messy, always complicated, and always deeply human. For those who skated the streets in the 90s, it's a love letter. For those born later, it's a window into what that world felt like. For everyone, it's a reminder that the most painful parts of growing up are often the ones that shape us most. And it's not just the characters or the story that stick with you. It's the quiet in-between moments. Stevie holding his breath in the hallway, trying to muffle his pain. The flicker of pride in his eyes after landing a trick. The way fourth grade films his friends not for clout, but because he sees something in them, something worth remembering. These tiny, seemingly throwaway moments are where Mid90s finds its soul. They speak volumes without saying a word. Looking back now, it's easy to see how this film carved out its own legacy. It didn't just launch Jonah Hill's directing career. It reshaped expectations. It showed that you don't need explosions or spectacle to leave a mark. You need heart. You need truth. and you need the courage to tell a story that doesn't apologize for its rough edges. The film's influence has spread quietly but powerfully, impacting how other directors approach memory, youth, and authenticity on screen. And it's not just influencing filmmakers. It's influencing viewers, making people rethink their own childhoods, their own definitions of family, their own moments of becoming. The beauty of Mid90s lies in its contradictions. It's intimate but expansive. It's funny and tragic. It's about skating, but it's really about surviving. And that's what makes it endure. It doesn't try to define adolescence. It just shows it, warts and all. And by doing so, it gives us the rare gift of reflection. If you've ever felt out of place, if you've ever fought to be seen, if you've ever crashed and burned and somehow got up again, Mid90s was made for you. It doesn't offer easy answers. It offers something better, understanding. And in a world where stories are often sanitized for mass appeal, Mid90s stands out as something raw, something real, something deeply alive. So as we wrap this journey, this cinematic ride through scraped knees, tight bonds, and the fragile beauty of growing up, let's carry that feeling forward. That reminder that even our roughest moments matter. That even the dumb things we did as kids are part of something bigger. That sometimes the hardest parts of youth are what make us who we are. If you love this breakdown, give the video a thumbs up and subscribe for more deep dives into the world of cinema. Let's keep exploring movies together. Because stories like Mid90s aren't just worth watching, they're worth remembering.